some of the young girls were really misbehaving, sitting improperly. And after that day, one of the university students said to me, you know what, I feel so sorry for those kids because I can see that they don't have a parent who cares about them. Because if they did, they wouldn't be sitting in that way. They would have been told to sit properly right from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, people don't know that, this whole idea of compassion being the number one value in our society has really skewed things so that people are getting sloppy. They're getting away with things that they wouldn't have gotten away with, say, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And it's very difficult to keep standards up so that you can have excellence. And excellence isn't valued like it was. It's very strange how things have fallen by the wayside. And virtue, and talking about virtue, that the whole idea of virtue is that you are kept to a standard, right? You have an ideal that you're striving towards, and people are trying to drop that idea that there is an ideal to strive for, and that's a disaster for the whole society, not just for the family, not just for the child, but for the whole society.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Tammy Peterson podcast. Today, I'm talking to my good friend, Queenie Yu. Queenie is the assistant director at Kintore College, a female resident near the University of Toronto campus that was inspired by St. Josemaria Escriva, the founder of Opus Dei. Queenie became a Catholic after her first year at the University of Waterloo, where she studied environmental studies and psychology. After completing her MBA, she worked in sales, marketing, politics, and in the charitable sector. She is passionate about mentoring young women and is honored to be helping in the organization of Pope Francis' visit to Canada. In this podcast, we discussed a variety of topics, including the pursuit of virtue, when society conflicts with virtue, instilling virtue through routine and punctuality, the community's role in the building of virtue, showing self-respect and standing up for yourself, the value of telling the truth, and the value of being focused on others rather than focusing on yourself. This is one of the many podcasts I've recorded with Queenie. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find more wisdom from Queenie on my YouTube channel.
Hi, Queenie.
Hi, Tammy. How are you?
Good to see you.
Good seeing you.
I'm looking forward to our conversation today, and I'm curious to know what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, I was thinking of talking about parenting, raising kids in virtue.
Okay.
Yeah, well, for one thing, you have a new grandchild.
I do. I have a new granddaughter.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And Mother's Day is coming up.
And Mother's Day is coming up. So yes, let's talk about virtue and raising our children.
Yeah, and the other thing was it's the end of the academic year, and at Kintore, where I'm kind of like the house mom or one of the house moms, I just have been reflecting on the growth of the girls since September.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that initially, none of them knew one another. We have a lot of introverts in the house, and they all came out of their shell.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very beautiful to see the growth in them. And I remember one get together that we had in the beginning in September. We had just gotten the piano tuned, and we asked some people just to go and play something because we knew many people knew how to play the piano. And a lot of them said, oh, I haven't practiced in a long time. And suddenly they would play magnificently. And each one of them was the same. But they were so self-conscious
Mm-hmm.
and thinking and comparing themselves with one another. But last week we had a talent show at the end of the academic year.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was just themselves.
That's nice.
And they weren't comparing themselves. It didn't matter if they made mistakes while singing or while playing any instrument. They were just all comfortable with one another because they finally have seen the others as a family member,
Mhm.
who loves them instead of somebody who judges them or competes with them.
Mhm.
So I thought that was very beautiful.
Yeah, it must be beautiful. You must be very pleased to be at the end of the year and have had a successful year with Kintore Open and Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that made me think of the role of a parent. And it made me think of some of the conversations that I've had to have with some of the girls. They weren't all pleasant. Sometimes I had to point out things that they needed to change. But the beautiful thing was, after explaining the reasons behind what we were asking, they understood and they said, okay, I'm going to be better.
Mhm.
I'll try again.
Yeah, so virtue isn't all, it's not easy. It's not an easy trait, right? And it's not a nice trait. It's a truthful trait.
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then part of the role of being a parent or a grandparent in your case right now is sometimes you have to be demanding.
You have to demand hugs from your grandson
Yes.
or demand that he let you kiss him on the belly button. You have to demand that.
Yes.
Jordan's very funny. He says, do you want a bop on the head? And Elliot says, no, come here and get a bop on the head. So eventually Elliot comes, gets a bop on the head.
Yes.
But it's good because, these little games that we play with our grandchildren gives them courage, right? Because this little bit of demanding that they do something. And I'm finding my son, they came for dinner last night, and their little girl, being just 2 weeks old, she was laying on a blanket on the floor. But Elliot was sitting in his seat, and he's not quite 2. He'll be 2 on Sunday. And he was putting his hands in his water cup. And Julian was sitting beside him. That's his dad, right? And he took the cup and he put it aside. And he said, because Elliot had tried to put his hands in his dad's cup as well. And Julian said, "No, Elliot, you can't put your hands in Dada's cup, and you can't put your hands in your cup. That's to drink out of. It's not to put your hands in." And so he takes it away and he says, "Look at me, and you can tell the self-will of a child, right? You can tell. So he finally looks at Julian, his eyes go up there, and you can tell it's hard for him to attend to what Julian wanted. And Julian said, "So, are you going to be a good big boy?" And he said, "I'm going to be a good little boy." And he said, "Okay, be a good little boy." And then he gave him back everything and he continued to eat. But it's really good to see Julian demanding the virtue and not allowing Elliot to do things that bother him, because those little things get in the way of your love for those people. And that's no good.
Yes.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a time when I went with some of the girls from the residence, not Kintore, but another one, a residence in Ottawa, Val Rideau, where I was living. So I went with some of the university students to a school because we were going to teach the kids, I think it was math or something. And some of the young girls were really misbehaving, sitting improperly. And after that day, one of the university students said to me, "You know what? I feel so sorry for those kids because I can see that they don't have a parent who cares about them. Because if they did, they wouldn't be sitting in that way. They would have been told to sit properly right from the beginning."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, people don't know that, this whole idea of compassion being the number one value in our society has really skewed things so that people are getting sloppy. They're getting away with things that they wouldn't have gotten away with, say, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And it's very difficult to keep standards up so that you can have excellence. And excellence isn't valued like it was. It's very strange how things have fallen by the wayside. And virtue and talking about virtue, that the whole idea of virtue is that you are kept to a standard, right? You have an ideal that you're striving towards, and people are trying to drop that idea that there is an ideal to strive for, and that's a disaster for the whole society, not just for the family, not just for the child, but for the whole society.
And I think some people are afraid to make demands on others. They're afraid to disagree with others because they want to be liked. Jordan speaks about that, right?
Yeah, and I think social media has something to do with that. The whole idea of likes on social media. It's as if we're being trained now on social media to be showing what we have that's good, what we've done that's good, but nothing else. Nothing of the parts of us that need a lesson or need work, or none of our sorrows and our shameful acts. Those are all hidden. They're not on social media. So then when people get together in school, I imagine, or in a residence like this, they're going to be showing exactly who they are, the good and the bad. And at the beginning of the year, that's tricky. That was tricky for them, right? By the end of the year, the good and the bad, they know the good and the bad is okay. It's all good, because you're learning from the bad and getting better.
Okay, and I think another reason why some people may be afraid to make demands on other people is because of this mentality that, oh, whatever you think is okay. Your truth is good and her truth is good. And so who am I to tell you how you can be better? Or
so how do you deal with that at the residence that you're the mother at?
Yes. Okay. So one thing we have here is cleaning of the rooms at specific times, or punctuality at meals, because we eat lunch together and eat supper together unless the girls have class. And what we do is, yes, of course, you're free to come in at any time, but if we want to show respect to the staff, we arrive 1 minute early, so that we won't delay them in cleaning the dishes. Otherwise, they'll arrive home late. So one way of helping them is by arriving punctually.
Yes.
And so we understand your desire to stay out with your friends a little longer or to study a little longer, but one way to show respect is by living punctuality.
Yes, that's really important. What else? Can you think of another one? So punctuality is important.
Yes, the other thing is the room cleaning.
Right.
So every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, staff go into the rooms, to the bedrooms at 9:30 a.m. I mean, I think that's a pretty reasonable time, but there are some girls who have a different study schedule, and they're staying up until 3 a.m. and of course sleeping in until, let's say, 11 a.m. So they often leave a note on their door saying no cleaning, but that happens every single day, multiple weeks at a time, and that can't be. So we've explained to them, for one thing, if people don't clean your bathroom for a while, mold develops, and that's a health hazard. The other thing is, we want to help you live a proper schedule, and we want to prepare you for the outside world, because the outside world won't allow you to sleep in until 11 a.m. if you're working for a company. So you better start acquiring those good habits right now. And the other thing is, the staff have been hired to work at specific times. So if you're in your room and everyone else is in their room, the staff aren't able to do their job. So out of respect for them, could you please respect the cleaning schedule?
And how long has it been like that? Those rules have been in place for how long? The whole time?
Basically, since the beginning. Well, there were some changes during second semester. First semester, we only had cleaning twice a week, and then second semester, 3 times a week. But yeah, and then initially first semester, they were better. And then things started sliding in second semester.
And so what do? They empty the garbage cans and vacuum and clean the bathroom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dust, everything.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
That's a great service.
Yes. And it's kind of like we see our staff like our mothers, grandmothers, so we treat them with respect.
Mhm.
And they show that they care about us through the cooking, the cleaning, and the laundry that they do.
Mhm. Mhm.
So when people are stressed out, they prepare a special meal just to
Mhm.
make people smile.
Very nice.
When they return the laundry, it's all nicely folded.
Mhm. It's very smart. It's a very smart. Well, I've been there. It's well run, and I never notice any ill feeling anywhere in the building. You know, sometimes you can come to a house and you can tell that it's not a happy place. I don't feel that about Kintore. I feel that when there's trouble, well, I mean, what do you do when there's somebody who's discontent?
Good thing this year that didn't happen, but in previous years that did happen. And I've had a conversation with a girl saying, perhaps this isn't the best fit. Maybe you'd be happier elsewhere. And she agreed, and she found another place.
Mm,
But it's not an easy conversation to have.
no. But there is the chance that that wasn't the right place for her.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Exactly.
And do you follow up with that person? Do you know what happens to her?
I messaged her, but she didn't respond in the end. So
She's moved on.
yes.
Yeah.
And I hope I give the message to all the girls that, I'm available to help them whenever they want.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
If I had a house mom, I'd like her to be like you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because when I went to university, I lived on my own. I had roommates. Sometimes it went well, sometimes it didn't. But I didn't have any guidance, from anyone, because we just had our rooms. And I think having someone or a number of staff that you're responsible to is a good precedent, because when you're going to be working in the working world, there's going to be bosses and there's going to be people that you're responsible for as well. And this is practice. It's all practice, isn't it, for growing up?
Yes. I've also spoken with some of the introverts of the house. One of them was living alone in an apartment for first year. And then afterwards, she moved to Kintore. And she said Kintore really helped her to grow in social skills.
Mm.
And whenever she was stressed out, she was really stressed out. But living at Kintore, when she was stressed out, she would see people, talk with them, and that would help her.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we need community.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And that's what I'm finding too. I'm not an extrovert. I'm not an introvert, but I'm not an extrovert. I'm kind of in the middle. So I can stay by myself comfortably. But I find that having a good community of people and always having people I can reach out to keeps my thoughts straight, gives me guidance on how I should act without reacting, without haste, after a pause with some mindful attention. Then I can give a more tasteful response to something that maybe is difficult for me. Yeah, community is very good. And those girls, I don't know, do they share a room, or do they?
No, they're all individual rooms.
All individual rooms. So they have their privacy.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. No, wow, beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's the only institution like that on U of T campus, is it not?
I think so.
There's a boys' dorm.
Yes, there's Kintore College, which is a 10-minute walk away, and it's just for the guys.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And actually, there was another girl who is in a demanding program, like many courses, lots of projects. And during the year, she wasn't that present at mealtime or get-togethers. And we told her that maybe it wasn't the right fit, that she wouldn't be happy coming back next year. And then for the last 2 weeks, she was really involved in the life of the residents. Like, she was present at all the meals and get-togethers, organizing talent shows and outings and everything. And then she said, you know what? The more involved I am, the more I want to stay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was just very beautiful. Like, she thought that if she like lived according to all the rules and forced herself to come to the get-togethers, she would think that the environment would be too suffocating, but it was actually the opposite.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting? When Julian was a little guy, he would often, go to school. He'd go to school and kind of become infected by the kids in the class who were the most disruptive. He'd kind of come home trying out their behaviors, and so he'd come home and we'd say, oh, Julian's caught some, he's not himself today. He's come home with somebody else. And then we'd pay closer attention to him. We wouldn't let him get away with anything.
Mm-hmm.
We'd make sure that everything he did was on point. And what would happen was it was as if he was straying from us because we were allowing him to stray.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we paid lots of attention, then we would pull him back, and pretty soon he would be more in love with us.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very interesting to see how that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Attention, that is what they want.
Yeah.
And that's what they crave, is attention. And they'll get it however they can. So if the only way they can get it is in a manipulative way, then they're going to learn to manipulate. But if they can be straightforward with what they want, then you end up with somebody who can ask for what they want, which is a super good thing to know, how to ask for what we need.
Mm-hmm.
And to be in a group and, like you said, participating like that, then you have all of that to learn from as well, and how to get along with the community. There was also another, when the kids were young, there was a young girl on the block who came from a single family. Her mom was a single mom, and she didn't have any siblings or anything, so she was on her own. And when the kids would play outside, she would come to play, but she would ask them to play what she wanted to play, instead of playing what the rest of the kids wanted to play. And then the kids wouldn't want to do that, because, you have to kind of come up to the group, see what the group is doing, join the group, and then maybe suggest something else. But you can't just, come there, put your foot down and say, this is what I want, and expect things to change. And so there was some difficulty on the street with this one child who couldn't share, she couldn't join the game. She couldn't join the game. And it was sad to see. I'm sure that she's learned her lessons, I've seen her. I don't know her anymore, but she does still come around. And maybe one day I'll get to speak to her and see what's happening. But the beginning, like when they were early elementary school, I was somewhat worried about her, because she didn't know how to get into the group in a graceful manner. And that's really important, so that you can be accepted.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that reminds me of a girl. Her dad spoke with me about her, that she had been bullied in no matter which school she went to. I don't know the girl myself, but I think learning how to deal with one's peers is a very important skill.
Mm-hmm.
And learning how to deal with bullies as well. I don't know if you have any tips on that.
Well, I know that there's a psychologist named Dan Olweus from one of the Scandinavian countries. I'm not quite I don't remember which one it was. Dan Olweus, and he was really his research worked really well for getting rid of bullies. People could look him up, Dan Olweus. And I asked recently to remind me, because it's been years since I've thought of him, but he encouraged everyone to speak up. Everyone to speak up. That way, if you're not putting up with being bullied, if everyone is speaking up, then there's no chance for anyone to be dominating of everyone else. And so there are no secrets, just tell it like it is at every moment so that everything stays on the level.
Mm-hmm. I know a teenager or a girl who was born with a defective eye,
Mm-hmm.
and she had to have an artificial eye ever since she was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And kids can be very mean.
Mm-hmm.
So there was this one girl who was, you could say, making fun of her, bullying her. And at one point in time, the girl with the artificial eye stood up for herself and told the bully, like, why are you doing this to me? This is how you're making me feel, and you should stop. And the bully, surprisingly, started bursting into tears and just showed her vulnerable side. And eventually they became friends.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, yeah.
That's
so
a good story.
The bully had, wounds of her own, had her own insecurities. And I guess to make herself feel, I don't know, more like better about herself, she was putting someone else down. But, that obviously wasn't the healthy thing to do.
Right. No, that's not the healthy thing to do. That's not a virtue.
No.
A virtue would be humility.
Yes.
Right.
And, but yeah, the importance of speaking up and respecting oneself. Because if you let somebody bully you're not respecting yourself.
Right. People have a hard time standing up for themselves, and we can be judgmental about ourselves sometimes more than anybody. And that, if you think that through and you realize that there's something about you that's divine, and that it isn't yours to mess with, that it's yours to support and encourage. And it's kind of it's a very interesting thought, right? Not to be thinking that everything is me, about me is just me. It's not all just me. It's also what I've been given as gifts. And it's our obligation to honor those gifts.
Yes.
And stand up for those gifts, and stand up for the challenges that we have as well. Yeah.
And like, we were made in the image and likeness of God. We are temples of the Holy Spirit. So because of our dignity, we should respect ourselves, and others should respect us as well. And we should respect other people. So this also makes me think of people who are involved in toxic relationships. I talk with the girls and I say, you know what? If you're in a relationship where your boyfriend isn't treating you with respect, drop him, because you deserve better. And I mean, I understand their way of thinking, self-sacrifice, but there's a limit.
Yeah, well, often there's young girls who think that they can change their boyfriend for the better.
Yes.
But there is no changing other people. You can only change yourself. And so if you're bringing something to the relationship that's making it more difficult, you need to become aware of that. But if you're not bringing anything that's destructive to the relationship, if you're doing your best to be aware of your foibles and your shortcomings, and you're doing your best to be a better person always, the person that you're with, and I think what what we based our relationship on when we got married was on telling the truth. You know, it was necessary. And when I'd never had anybody before. I'd never had a friend who said, if we're going to be friends, we have to tell the truth. But that was really a good thing to hear from someone, that they cared for themselves enough that they wanted to enforce a rule that was a guiding light, right? Truth, a guiding light for our relationship. And it was helpful. It was so helpful. And I mean, the first year I was asked to tell the truth, I carried a little New Testament Bible around in my pocket.
Wow.
And I looked at everything I did, saying, well, is this truthful? And is that truthful? Is how I conduct my life truthful? I hadn't really thought of it that way, but I thought of it, well, really from then on, I thought of it. All someone had to do is suggest it to me. And then it seemed like a good idea. So a lot of times you don't need that much encouragement. So it's really good to tell the truth, because you never know who's going to be listening and who's going to be encouraged by what you say. But the only thing we can change is ourselves. We can't change our boyfriends. So, and women, you know, sometimes they go and they go to jails. They write to convicts and think that they can rehabilitate the people in jail. And, you know, you have to be a very special person to help other people. And it can't be for your own benefit. You know, that's where people can sometimes go wrong, is they want someone else to be better so that they look better. And that just doesn't work. It never goes well.
You know, I know a lot of girls who get into relationships thinking that they can change their boyfriend. Do you think men go into relationships thinking that they can change their girlfriend?
I don't know. I don't know. I think so, probably. I think we all make the same mistakes. Globally, you know, there's a limited number of ways to go off the beaten path. And I imagine that men and women can go off the beaten path in as many ways. You know, maybe men more than likely they'll more likely use aggression. They're bigger, right? And women will more likely use manipulation because they're smaller. And so it's a more subtle way to get what you want without physically putting yourself out there. And so, you know, the sexes, they do have different ways of trying to get their way, but becoming aware of how we do it is super helpful. And then trying to be more straightforward and dropping those things, because those things are usually brought about because of fear, right? Or because of fear or anger or yeah.
Well, you said earlier, telling the truth.
Tell the truth. And I think when I thought tell the truth, I thought it was about what I did, which was true. What I was doing, how I was running my life, that was true. I never really thought about it as deeply as I think about it now. Truth now has to do with my thoughts. I never thought it was important. I thought I could think whatever I wanted to think, but that's not true, actually. You know, because your thoughts turn into actions eventually. So you got to be really careful. You know, the Columbine killers, they thought and thought and thought nasty thoughts for a very long time before they shot up the schools. Mm-hmm. And so it isn't just the actions people do, it's thoughts they have. And so, you know, that's part of the virtue training. Yeah. And I don't know how I think all we can do is train our own thoughts. It's very hard I don't know how you do that as a mom with all these young women, help them with their thoughts.
we have deep discussions.
Okay.
And that's why whenever I speak with the girls or give a class, I try to explain why we do things.
Mm-hmm.
If I have to, actually, one day I told one of the girls, when somebody's speaking, even though you want to take notes on your phone, it would be better not to use your phone while someone else is speaking, because it could look like you're doing your own thing and you're not paying attention to the speaker.
Mm-hmm.
She said, well, like, do I have to always think about what other people are thinking about me? Like, my parents taught me to be an independent woman, to not care about what others think of me and what I do. And I said, yeah, that's important. But at the same time, it's, well, etiquette. And then the other thing is, if many people think that it's not polite to be using your phone while someone else is talking, maybe it would be better for you not to use your phone. And then I also explained, imagine you're on a date with your boyfriend and you're talking about something very important, and he goes on his phone and starts researching about that topic. Well, I don't think you're going to be very, very happy, because he's not concentrated on you. He's concentrated on the topic that you were talking about. Mm-hmm. And you are more important than the subject matter that you're talking about. So then she understood.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think when it comes to, like, when you asked, how can we teach people to think differently? Explain the why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And bring up stories that are associated with the principle.
Yeah. But when you were, sorry.
Well, I was thinking about these young girls that you're with, that you're mentoring, and they're in university studying to become to graduate from one discipline or another. But life is bigger than just the career choice that they make. So what do you guys do to broaden their attention?
Yeah. So we tell them that Kintore isn't just a place to eat and sleep and study. So we want to encourage them to give to the others and see everybody else as a member of their family. So we celebrate each other's birthdays, and people take turns making a birthday card for somebody else. People take turns organizing an outing for somebody. We also encourage them to do volunteer work in the community. So there's a soup kitchen behind us. We encourage them to go and visit seniors at a long-term care facility. We encourage them to volunteer to tutor a high school girl. So there are many volunteer activities. And that way, they're not just focused on their studies and themselves and what they like to do. They're thinking about what they can do for other people, how their gifts can improve somebody else's life.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Well, I've been mentoring a university student through your program.
Yes.
And this is the second year. And at first she didn't contact me because she thought I was too busy. But once she did contact me, we met weekly after that. And now that this university term is over, we're going to meet twice a month or monthly over the summer, which is what she wanted to do. And it wasn't just about her career. Mm-hmm. It was about her study habits, her living arrangements, her health, how she was feeling, her relationships. It had to do with more of her life than that. In her study time, did she study alone? Did she study with people? Her study time, how much time was she spending per subject? What were they worth? What did she want to do when she got out of university? There were many, many different questions to ask. And it was very good for me to give my time to someone. And it was really good for her to have someone to speak to who had studied so many years ago and who had now retired really from what I was doing, but had enjoyed what I did. So I could talk to her about the way that I found to go through my life that was successful. And so, being around other people, this whole idea of community, it's very, Franklin, when he opened the public library, he suggested that people, the way to start the library was to ask for something from someone else. And that was the way that they could ask you for something else. And so then you get this give and take starting. And that's how you built the public library. Very cool.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do you mentor because you were looking for guidance as a young person and maybe didn't get as much guidance as you had wanted?
Well, that's definitely the truth. I didn't have as much guidance as I probably needed, but I think I mentor because I wanted to, who I was when I was between 17 probably and 22. I don't think I had the guidance and the discipline that I might have had if I would have been followed by a community. And so giving back to that age group of people gives back to myself. It's kind of like making an amends to myself when I was young. And maybe to my daughter too. If I didn't spend the time necessary with her, then spending time now with someone who's between 17 and 22 can also help me to feel like I'm making an amends to my daughter in case there was anything in our time where I wasn't there for her. So yes, I think that these ways that we volunteer our service are ways to make up for who we've been in the past or what we've experienced in the past. Yes, that's why I think some people end up getting involved with people who are troublesome. And that can be a tricky thing if you don't know what you're doing, right? If you're not prepared, if you don't have the infrastructure around you that's developed to be safe while you're doing that. Sometimes I can remember when I was younger, I was kind of interested in people who were down and out. But in order to help someone like that, you have to be pretty sophisticated. I mean, look at how many people are on the street. If we knew what to do about them, they wouldn't be on the street. So it's very, very difficult problem. And to just think that because I feel some compassion towards those people that I should step right in and help, that's, what is that? That's putting the cart before the horse, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so it's very tricky to know what you are ready to do and what you aren't ready to do. And if you're in a community, you can ask your friends and they can tell you their experience. And it's a lot easier for me to listen to someone and what they are doing than it is for me to think about what I'm doing. So it's good to share it because they can see it objectively and what I'm doing, and I can see objectively what they're doing. And so hopefully if we have the best, if we're hoping for the best for each other and for ourselves, then we can move forward. But very tricky to do that on our own because our thoughts, they can go places that aren't good if we don't share what we're thinking about. And you have to reach out, you have to talk to someone, and regularly, not just once a month or even once a week, but regularly, even once a day. When I had little kids and I was working as a massage therapist, I used to think, well, I need at least one massage a day. Right? I needed to connect with at least one person I didn't know or who I was serving a day. And then I was okay. So I think that every day, that's why people need to go outside every day, right? And say hello. That's a way of communicating. Just say hello. Yeah. Because there's lots of people in the city who don't have anyone.
Yes. When you're talking about mentoring the girl,
Mhm.
there was, one of our university students here, she had a mentor and she was very grateful to what her mentor did, like the advice that she gave her. Her mentor connected her with an internship that she was very grateful for. And she was asking, what can I do for my mentor? But she has everything. And then what do I know? What can I do for her? And then I said, well, be thankful, make it a nice card, etc. But she came to the conclusion that the best way to express her gratitude to her mentor was to help other people, to volunteer her time as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking, generosity is like this chain reaction. When you are the recipient of unconditional love, you know what it is and you give it to somebody else.
Yeah. Yes.
And imagine if our entire society could do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Things turn around very quickly if you start doing that.
And that's why at Kintore, we're trying to teach the young women, give. Like, don't think only of your studies, your interests. Help the others in the house. Help those in the community.
Mm-hmm. So when we were on tour, we had a Q&A after the lectures, and we had an app where people would post questions, and then the guests in the lecture would vote them up and down. And so then I'd know what people really wanted to hear about. And often there was a question of, how can I find the perfect mate? And I can't say it was always men asking the question. I can't remember. Often they say anonymous, so I can't tell. And it's interesting to think. So you're thinking that you're going to find someone perfect to match you because you're perfect, right? You're not perfect. If you found someone who is perfect, they wouldn't be choosing you, right? Because we're not perfect. So instead of saying, where can I find a mate that's perfect for me, you can say, what can I do? What can I do to attract a mate? What can I do? What can I give? What can I offer? Yeah, that's a totally different question. Hey, mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
No, go.
Well, we spend a lot of time wondering what we can get for ourselves, and it's backwards. Why do you think it's like that? That everybody thinks they should figure out what they can get for themselves? It's so backwards.
Yeah, I think, original sin. That's all we think about, ourselves and what we can get.
So what's the story in original sin that you're relating to?
Well, Adam and Eve, they eat the fruit of that tree. And as a result, there's a disorder within them. So before they could know the truth, act on it, and then now, after original sin, they know the truth, but don't necessarily do it, even though it's the good thing. So we know we should study for that exam tomorrow, but instead we go on YouTube. So it's the consequence. So we're just disordered. And instead of being God-centered, we are turned in on ourselves. So the healing is turning back towards God and towards other people.
Right. And when we say turning towards God, I mean, I agree with that, and it's fine, and I'm fine with it. But lots of people have trouble with that, right? But really, turning towards other people, turning to the best in other people, that's turning towards God.
Mm-hmm.
you're turning towards what you can do that's best for the best in other people, encouraging the best in someone, encouraging the best in yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I often have the young women coming up to me and saying, there aren't any good guys out there. They're not asking me out.
Right.
And then what I tell them is, what are you doing to improve yourself? Like, you're not looking for a boyfriend to complete you. You have to stand on your own. And the more you improve yourself, like grow in virtue, grow in skills, do hobbies, do volunteer work, you're going to be more attractive.
Mm-hmm.
That he will ask you out because he sees, wow, what a caring person.
Mm-hmm.
What an articulate, intelligent, brave individual. I am attracted to her, not just because of how she looks or how she dresses, but because of who she is.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think that's a good place to stop. That was a good answer. See you Monday.
See you later.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.